from the broadcast center in Medicine Hat, in high definition, this is Chat News.
Warning to parents.
It's getting to be a trend with the kids, and I don't think it's any safer than cigarettes, obviously.
A Lethbridge teenager is seriously injured after his electronic cigarette explodes. New rules for pipelines.
We think this represents a fair and balanced approach.
The federal government announces new rules for assessing major resource projects.
With less than 3 weeks to go until the Alberta Winter Games, 2 local speed skaters are gearing up. We'll have their story in sport.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. A 16-year-old Lethbridge boy is suffering first and second degree burns after he says an electronic cigarette exploded in his mouth. He says the force of the blast knocked out 2 of his teeth. Kimberly Tam says the details, and just a warning, some viewers may find some of the images in this story disturbing.
It was horrible. No father should have to witness that.
This picture was taken moments after 16-year-old Ty Greer says his electronic smoke exploded in his mouth.
It was very loud, and there was a fireball about probably 2 feet by 2 feet, and it lit his gym bag. He was in his mom's Jeep, and it lit the gym bag on fire beside him.
Singed and sooty and cut, and it was blown apart, but it was in the inside, so they sewed it back together. But yeah.
He suffered first and second degree burns to his face and fractured several teeth.
Very severe pain. It took about 2 hours. I held him for 2 hours until the morphine kicked in.
For me, the whole situation's given me a different perspective on how I feel about my brother, because so close to losing him.
Ty's father, Perry, says Ty is a talented hockey player who's never smoked tobacco.
It's getting to be a trend with the kids, and I don't think it's any safer than cigarettes, obviously.
According to Ty's father, he purchased the e-cigarette from this Northside store. The owner of the store declined comment to Global News, but did speak with Perry.
I've talked with the owner of the store. He's very, very remorseful. He cried the whole time I talked to him. Told me he hasn't slept for a week.
Now Ty faces a series of expensive dental surgeries as he prepares for a long recovery. Kimberly Tams, Global News.
A volleyball player with the Medicine Hat College Rattlers is facing some serious allegations tonight. Matthew Allen Meyer was charged with sexual assault and sharing intimate images of another person without their consent. Police responded to the college on January the 17th. Charges were laid shortly after. The college has since met with some of the students involved to offer counseling and support services. Director of College Advancement Mark Keller says the school is also reaching out to police for help in educating students on issues like the sharing of intimate images.
We hope to bring one of the programs that they have called EPIC, which is about appropriate life decisions, to our campus to share with our students so that they have opportunity to learn more about appropriate behavioral norms in some situations.
Keller says they are taking this situation seriously and working to support any students and athletes affected. Meyer is expected to appear in court again on February the 17th. He has since quit the team and dropped out of school. Time now for first look at weather, and you can see absolutely beautiful 2 degrees right now. It did get up to 8 degrees, and what do you do when you almost set a record? Well, you go to the car wash. This is a shot of the car wash on First Street, lined up as you might expect. Winds out of the south at 8 kilometers per hour. Lots of sunshine today. We'll have a full AccuWeather forecast, including a 7-day forecast, a little later on in the show. Later on the Chat Evening News, it's the worst terror attack in Canadian history, and now the only person convicted in the Air India bombing set to be released from prison. That story a little later on in the show. In a typical year, Samus Immigration usually welcomes around 50 immigrants to the city. But this year, staff have already welcomed 84 Syrian refugees, and more resources are needed to keep up with the demand. English classes are just one of the number of programs offered by the association, and with the influx of immigrants, Executive Director Antonio Samioa says Samus immigration needs to expand. He says the federal government is helping with costs. However, Mayor Ted Clarkson says the government hasn't considered the additional costs that are falling on the city of Medicine Hat.
We need at least another 2 English classes and some more staff in all the programs. So yeah, we probably need to move to another location.
Well, now there's one more child in that classroom that doesn't speak the language and could have been traumatized from wherever he or she came from. So that takes extra resources. So the community as a whole pays. Or healthcare, walk-in clinic. Of course, there's more people in the community, but there's no extra healthcare dollars, obviously.
Samioya says they're hoping to expand in time for the next wave of refugees. That'll happen in February. Well, concerns have recently been raised over the accuracy of police radar equipment. It was discovered a calibration test for radar units in police cars were no longer being done by several police forces, including the Ontario Provincial Police. The report found those organizations had moved away from the traditional testing method, which uses a tuning fork. The piece of steel is struck against a surface, and it creates a vibration which mimics that of a vehicle moving at a specific speed. The discovery brought into question the validity of a number of speeding tickets in those areas. Now here in Medicine Hat, officers are required to perform the tuning fork test. Constable Chris Y. Rostock says the fork also gets sent in calibration every year to ensure they're accurate.
That's just something that we do. It's part of the package that we'll bring to court, those tuning fork certificates to show that that's one of the tests that we do, and that when we test that unit at the start of every shift that we know that it's working properly and it'll accurately display a speed for us.
And Y. Rostock says at the beginning of every shift, officers carry out the tuning fork test, and each unit on the force does an internal test to make sure the systems are operating properly. Well, the Family Leisure Center is still on track to open sometime in June, and today we got a chance to go inside and see how the construction is coming along. As you can see, much of the building is based on an open space concept. In total, the expansion will add another 125,000 square feet to the facility. And that includes a 41,000 square foot field house and indoor running track. Manager of Recreation Dave Young says the new facility will allow the city to offer a lot more programs and activities for residents.
I think it's going to open up a whole bunch of opportunities. We have more dry land space, gym space in the city, and that's been one of those things that have been in need for the community, and we discovered that in 2011 when we did the Recreation Master Plan.
And while the expansion is set to open in June, there's still not a set date for the grand opening. In Laloche, Saskatchewan, the wounds after last week's deadly school shooting are still fresh, but there is some relief as 3 of those hurt have now been released from hospital. The province says those 3 victims are no longer receiving treatment at Saskatoon's Royal University Hospital. Officials are not commenting on the condition of the other 4 people injured last Friday. Classes at the school will not resume for at least another week and a half. A second man has now died following an explosion at Nexon's facility at Long Lake. The incident occurred on January 15th and had already claimed the life of 52-year-old Drew Foster. Dave Williams had survived the explosion but was admitted to the burn unit at the University of Alberta Hospital with severe injuries. Occupational Health and Safety now confirming the 30-year-old died on Monday night. The Nova Scotia native was changing out valves on a compressor when the explosion took place. There are some new guidelines from the Trudeau government today on pipelines and just how to get them built. Canada's Natural Resource Minister says the changes are aimed at restoring public trust in how the projects are reviewed. Michael Couture has more on the rules and the impact they could have on the energy industry.
The Liberals promised a more robust environmental review of pipeline projects, and they've taken steps towards that, saying they'll do some more consultation, especially involving Indigenous people. Late this afternoon, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change and the Natural Resources Minister announced all of those changes. Now, in addition to consulting Aboriginals, they'll also conduct a wider consultation of people in communities who will be affected by the pipelines. That could go a long way to help Quebec municipalities get on board with the proposed Energy East pipeline. Last week, a united front of mayors said they would oppose the pipeline that would bring oil from Alberta all the way out to New Brunswick. The Liberals are also mandating an assessment to the upstream greenhouse gas emissions that will come from these pipelines. Now, those are emissions created from the extraction and transport of these natural resources, including, for example, the gas that will be burned by tankers transporting.
We think this represents a fair and balanced approach, one that is rooted in these principles and shows that Canada can deliver resource projects in a way that is consistent with the expectations of Canadians.
Despite the new rules, projects already underway, like the Trans Mountain Pipeline in BC and Energy East, won't have to go back to the drawing board. They will, however, have to go through this new review.
In response to today's announcement, Alberta's Environment Minister says getting our oil to Tidewater is an important priority. Shannon Phillips hopes the new interim rules will result in issues being heard so progress can be made. She's pleased that existing projects won't have to go back to square one, even though a decision on the Energy East pipeline likely won't happen until 2018.
I know that the timelines were not were decisions that were not taken lightly, and of course we are not also interested in unnecessary delays. But what we do want to see is a process that will get us to a positive decision.
The NDP also announced today it will release the details of its royalty review on Friday morning. Well, in an attempt to end the stigma around mental illness, Bell is hosting its annual Let's Talk Day. It encourages people to reach out and speak about things like depression, anxiety, and any number of other illnesses. The Medicine Hat Police Service says initiatives like these are extremely important. In 2015, there was roughly a 25% increase in the number of mental health calls. Inspector Brent Secondiak says they try to connect people in crisis situations with organizations that can help them.
Regular talks with Alberta Health Services, more than we've ever had in the past. So we're hoping that relationship with AHS and Ready Enterprises improves our response to these calls.
And Secondiak says police responded to 950 mental health calls last year. That's up from just over 700 from the previous year. Well, that does it for local news. Now for a look at what's happening in sports, here's Mitch.
Michael, the Alberta Winter Games are less than 3 weeks away, and athletes all over the province are practicing up. Now, here in Medicine Hat, the talent is also quite strong, especially in the sport of speed skating. Jacob Kruger and Caden Witkowsky, both 14 years old, are part of Zone 1's team, representing the southeast area of Alberta. Both have had successful years competing all over Western Canada. Kruger most recently placed 5th in the Saskatoon Long Track Meets 500 event. Witkowsky achieved his personal best in the 500 distance 2 weekends ago in Calgary, timing out to 49.87. Now, with just 17 days left until the games, practices are harsher, and the desire to make the podium is that much more. Hear what both of these young athletes have to say later on.
Coming up, an Edmonton soldier suffering from PTSD is told his service dog is not welcome. That story right after the break. This is a story about a man, his dog, and the Canadian military. Jeffrey Yetman is a sergeant. He served our country for 26 years, including in Bosnia and Afghanistan. He's now one of many veterans coping with post-traumatic stress disorder. And after all the attention PTSD has received, you would think Sergeant Yetman would get all the support he needs. But instead, as Jacques Barbeau reports, he's having to fight to keep his best friend by his side.
Sergeant Jeffrey Yetman has served his country for 26 years, but it's come at a price. After 5 deployments to Bosnia, Croatia, and Afghanistan, Yetman was diagnosed with PTSD in 2002.
I served my first tour at 19 years old in Croatia in 1993. I can't even explain what I saw there.
Yetman says his PTSD got so bad he couldn't leave his house, his anxiety sometimes sending him to the hospital. What saved him, he says, is Diego, a service dog. With Diego at his side, Yetman now feels comfortable going out in public. But there's one place Diego is not welcome. This past weekend, CFB Edmonton, where Yetman is stationed, said the dog can't walk freely on the base.
Now they're saying I can't go to the gym where I bring my children. Now I say, Daddy can't go. They're heartbroken. Okay, it's good, buddy.
For its part, the military base says it's just following Alberta law, which says only dogs certified by a group called ADI can be recognized as service dogs. In Yetman's case, Diego was certified by a different organization.
I know, for example, how I would feel if I was in a similar situation with Ty.
Medrick Cousineau is another military veteran with PTSD whose life was changed by a yellow lab named Ty. Cousineau says a small change in the rules could solve Yetman's dilemma.
I think at the heart of the issue in Alberta is there has to be a mechanism put in place that teams can be tested and certified, and that'll eliminate that.
Canada's top soldier says so far there's little medical evidence to support the therapeutic benefits of service dogs. We asked the defense minister about Yetman's situation.
My staff is actually looking into that, and I'll be getting a brief on it shortly. But rest assured, when it comes to the mental health of our troops, is that the absolute #1 priority for me and the department.
The military says it's trying to do a better job dealing with soldiers with mental health issues. But Sergeant Jeffrey Yetman says if that's the case, it will let him walk freely at the Edmonton base with Diego at his side. Jean Perbeau, Global News.
It's the worst terror attack in Canadian history, and now the only person convicted in the Air India bombing is set to be released from prison. Over the years, Inderjit Singh Rayot had been sentenced for various crimes related to the attack, most recently in 2010 for lying during his trial. A parole board has decided to grant statutory release with conditions. The 1985 bombing killed all 329 people on board, including 268 Canadians. Now, law officials in Oregon say one person is dead, 2 others are in custody. The FBI says the men are part of the armed standoff at a wildlife refuge now stretching into its 4th week. The Oregon Nature Preserve that's being occupied by anti-government group is surrounded by law enforcement a day after one of the occupiers was killed by officers during a traffic stop. 8 officers, including group leader Eamon Bundy, were arrested. The confrontation comes amid increasing calls for authorities to take action against Bundy for the illegal occupation of the National Wildlife Refuge over a long-running land dispute. Now, police raided several locations in Quebec and Toronto this morning following a 3-year investigation into child exploitation. So far, at least 10 people ranging in age from 27 to 74 have been arrested. They allegedly used online discussion forums to trade information about their sexual experiences with children. And police say they gave each other advice on tactics to use and places to frequent so they could sexually abuse the children. Well, just 10 days after international sanctions were lifted, Iran's president is meeting world leaders anxious to tap into a huge emerging market. Iran's population is 80 million. That's more than double that of Canada's. And more than 60% of Iranians are under the age of 30. Many are well educated and fairly wealthy, and they're hungry for products from the West. So, is Canada lining up to get in on the action? Vashi Capellos has a look.
Not long after Ottawa announced sanctions against Iran will be lifted, thousands of kilometers away, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani was pulling into the Vatican. His whirlwind trip to Italy, though, was anything but spiritual. It was all business. Consider what's happened in just the last 10 days since wider international sanctions against Iran were lifted. In France, Rouhani is set to sign a deal to buy 114 planes from Airbus, worth about $10 billion. During his trip to Italy, he signed more than a dozen business deals, including one with the steel manufacturer Danieli, worth $6.2 billion. And over in Germany, Siemens has signed a preliminary deal to provide $1.6 billion of transportation equipment to Iran.
We need to engage in a respectful, responsible way, and we will do exactly that.
Iran is going to become one of the most robust markets within 5 to 10 years.
Canadian businesses with know-how in oil and gas infrastructure or aerospace engineering, like Bombardier, stand to benefit in a big way when Canadian sanctions are lifted. But political scientist Piotr Dudkiewicz says that may take a while.
Because we do not have the diplomatic relations at the moment. We don't have official channels of communications.
The former Tory government called Iran one of the worst violators of human rights. It cut off diplomatic ties and shut down the Canadian embassy back in 2012. Liberals promised to reverse both those, but won't say when.
That is going 180 degrees in the wrong direction. Iran is still a state sponsor of terrorism.
Still, the Prime Minister insists engaging is better than the alternative.
We are behaving in a responsible way to move Iran away from its position of violation of human rights.
Liberals haven't revealed yet specifically which sanctions against Iran will be lifted, so it's difficult to determine the exact economic impact on Canada. But suffice it to say, with a market of 80 million people, the impact will likely be significant.
Financial Markets brought to you by Neil Mardian and Jason Petrick at TD Wealth, helping families make their wealth dreams a reality.
Time now for a look at today's closing market numbers, and it was kind of a topsy-turvy day for the loonie. It was up almost a full cent. It closed, however, only 0.2 cents up at 71.03 cents US. The TSX Composite Index gained 46 points to 12,377, and the Dow Jones was way off, down 222 points to 15,944. Gold is up $9.70 an ounce. It closed at $1,125.50 US. Natural gas off slightly. At one point, oil was up over $1. It ended the day 23 cents down to $32.07 US per barrel. And Mitch joins us now. How are you?
I'm good, Michael.
Yeah, good.
I'm good.
What do you got in sports?
Well, I got John Schick going to Hamilton.
How's that news? I told you that yesterday.
Yeah, you did. You did. I didn't say it wasn't going to happen. I just simply said I couldn't report on anything from John.
So you actually went and saw some speed skaters. There's some short track speed skaters the other day, and you've got that coming up as well.
That's right. Very, very impressive stuff right here in Medicine Hat. It's quite the popular sport.
I would love to try that. It would be a complete gong show.
Have you ever speed skated?
No, it would be a complete yard sale. It'd be all over the place, but it would be an absolute
That would be
riot.
It'd be like a giraffe on skates right
Exactly. Exactly.
That would be hilarious. I used to speed skate a little bit.
Did you really?
I did. Yeah. So, a special tip of the hat to the local speed skaters. That's
there
for
sure.
There you go. Yeah, well, in less than 17 days, Medicine Hat will be flooded with more than 2,200 athletes competing in the 2016 Alberta Winter Games. Practices, therefore, are running longer, and young athletes all over the province are burning with desire to make the podium. And that is just the case for two local speed skaters. Jacob Kruger and Caden Witkowsky, both 14 years old, are two of the 10 skaters to represent Zone 1 this year. Kruger has set several personal best times through the season, competing all over Western Canada. And just this past week, he placed 5th in the 500 meter in the Saskatoon long track meet 2 weekends ago. Witkowsky is another prospective skater out of the area, also competing throughout the West. He achieved his personal best in the 500 2 weekends ago in Calgary, timing out to 49.87. These two both train together, they compete together, and now they are teammates, and they say they're more than ready for the games.
For my first few competitions, I wasn't doing nearly as well as I am now, because my first few I was doing a bit slow, didn't have too good a form, and now recently I've been having a lot better form and gone a lot faster, getting better times.
My mind's just trying to do, thinking that I'm going to do well in it and hopefully in the end finish well.
Meanwhile, Zone 1 coach Caitlin Jollymore has been working alongside past coach Matt Perizzo leading up to the games. 5 of the 10 skaters from Zone 1 will compete from Medicine Hat, while the other 5 will come from Lethbridge. Jollymore says she's confident in her group of athletes.
All of them have gotten stronger physically, so they've been able to keep up with their cardio and different exercises like that, and their technique has quite improved.
They really need to focus on what they need to do and how much they want it, really. It's mostly a mental game.
The short track speed skating event kicks off on February 14th from the Family Leisure Center. Well, it's not easy heading out to the rink right after giving up a 4-goal lead to eventually lose on the road, let alone if that loss snaps a 17-game winning streak. Well, that's exactly what the Brooks Bandits had to wrap their heads around last night. Surrendering 5 unanswered goals to end a historic win streak in Camrose, the Bandits looked to get back in the win column last night in Drumheller. And they did it with a bang. Landon Welakalawa opened the scoring early in the second period, and the rest of the team didn't look back from that point on. After firing 41 shots on net, the Bandits took home a 4-1 victory. Velikalawa picked up a pair of goals, including the game winner, extending his point streak to 6 games. Josh Davies, meanwhile, returned to the crease for the first time in 8 games to capture his league-leading 26th win on the year. Brooks is now 9 points up on the Camrose Kodiaks for first place in the AJHL's South Division. The only team ahead of them in the entire league are the Spruce Grove Saints in the North Division. Their daunting 40 wins on the year have them 9 points up on Brooks. The Bandits return to action on Friday as they host the Canmore Eagles. A day after Weston Dressler became a Blue Bomber, former teammate John Chick becomes a Ticats. The 33-year-old defensive end has inked a 2-year contract with Hamilton. This comes 2 weeks after the Saskatchewan Roughriders made a bold move by releasing Chick and Dressler. He spent 6 seasons with the Roughriders, helping to capture 2 Grey Cups, and was awarded the CFL's most outstanding defensive player in 2009. The 6'4", 250-pound American had 42 tackles and 11 sacks with Saskatchewan last season. He's also spent time playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars and Indianapolis Colts in his career. And that's all I've got for sports for now. I'll be back with a broader look at the Australian Open. Some good news out of the Canadian boys coming up later on. Michael will have more news and weather after the break.
The turmoil in the markets continues as Canadians are hoarding more cash than ever. We'll have that story right after the break. Well, the stock markets continued their roller coaster ride today, and it's been the same for the price of oil and the loonie over the past few weeks. As Mike Drolet reports, that's causing Canadians as well as big companies to hoard more cash than ever.
There's a cloud hovering over Canadian investors. Gone are the sunny days of record returns, replaced by fear and loathing in the market.
If you did invest, would you be putting your money in the stock market right now?
God knows. I'm worried about the whole economy. I'm not sure we're on stable ground.
And that speaks to the current Canadian psyche. Volatility in the market has turned to growth in one key area of Canadians' portfolios: cash. Back in 2008, CIBC found that Canadian investors were hoarding $45 billion they would otherwise invest in the market. If investors were nervous then, they're downright terrified right now. That number today rising to $75 billion. Money that isn't earning the interest it could.
There is no turning point. You cannot really time the bottom. Nobody knows. But what we do know from past experience, that if you sit on this mountain of cash for too long, you really miss a lot of action.
That's where apps like Volio come into play. Its goal is to encourage young investors to get into the market, and right now, it's an uphill battle.
This generation did witness 2 very catastrophic corrections, and while the market in both cases rebounded, it does cause a bit of trepidation. It's about taking that first step.
But as much as investors are hoarding cash, it's a drop in the bucket next to big business, which has shown little faith in the economy. Corporate Canada's pile of so-called dead money was hovering at $680 billion in the fall, the fastest growth of any G7 country. Those companies are investing outside of Canada, just not here.
I'm like the bearer of bad news.
Yeah, exactly. You made my day a little bit worse. Thanks.
The late finance minister Jim Flaherty tried to avert the current situation by encouraging banks and businesses to open their wallets and invest in Canada. By driving growth, he said, they would create jobs which would ultimately stimulate the economy. The opposite has happened, and now hoarding cash is the newest Canadian pastime. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Well, an absolutely beautiful afternoon has turned into a very, very pleasant night. Geez, what a gorgeous day. Warm temperatures as well. Sun rose this morning at 8:04, and it's going to set at 5:07, giving us 3 more minutes of sunshine than yesterday. You can see the new normal low for this time of year, -15. Record high coming on this day in 1931. We almost got there. We missed it by about 3.7 degrees. Right now, it is 2 degrees and a little bit of cloud. Humidity is somewhat elevated, but the winds have died down. They were windy this afternoon, hitting gusts of about 35 kilometers per hour. 2 degrees gets us tied with Bow Island. Mostly clear there as well. Lethbridge, a little windier, 8 degrees and cloudy. Now, there is a Environment Canada wind warning in effect for McGrath and the Crow's Nest Pass area. I'm telling you that at lunch as well. Winds of 110 kilometers per hour. So if you're driving through Highway number 3, be careful, especially with the crosswinds there. Calgary, 10 degrees, still warm double digits. In Edmonton, 0. And there is also a rain warning in effect for Fort McMurray. They're expecting 5 to 10 millimeters in just a couple of hours. Over on into Saskatchewan, you can see Maple Creek doing well, 3 degrees. Cloudy though. Cloudy and Leader as well. They're 1 degrees and 2, mostly clear in Saskatoon. Regina and Swift Current, both 2. You can see as far as our area goes, not much precipitation. A little bit of precipitation to the north of Medicine Hat, but for southern Alberta, it is absolutely beautiful afternoon. Tomorrow, the temperatures will continue. They should reach about 10 degrees. As you can see, this low pressure system kind of move into the area. This high pressure system moves out. What it's going to mean tomorrow? Double-digit temperatures, but it's going to perhaps mean some rain on Friday, mixed with a little bit of snow, and then into the overnight on to Saturday. We're going to be windy as well tomorrow, but overnight low -5 degrees for Brooks, winds out of the southwest. Tomorrow, your daytime high, look at that. I think that might be a misprint, but they are expecting winds of up to 60 kilometers per hour and 7 and cloudy. Leader, you're going to be -6 overnight, partly cloudy skies. And the winds will ramp up. Though you'll see some gusts of about 45 kilometers per hour, mix of sun and cloud for you. Maple Creek, you're -2, cloudy, winds out of the west, gusting to about 35 kilometers per hour. Tomorrow, you're going to get all the way up to 12 degrees. Pretty good for January the 28th. Mostly cloudy skies for you, windy as well. And here in Medicine Hat, we're going to see a low of only down to -1. Cloudy overnight, winds out of the south. They should be gusting to about 40 kilometers per hour. And that is not a misprint. It's going to hit 80 kilometers per hour tomorrow. It will be warm, 10 degrees and cloudy. All right, stay tuned. Coming up after the break, more international news, and Mitch is in with his second look at sports.
Do you have a news tip? Visit our website, chattelevision.ca, and click on Submit a Tip. You can even send pictures and video, and we'll give you the credit. Simply fill out the form and submit. All tips go directly to Chat News. Chat News, connected to you.
Here are a few international stories making news today. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says since the beginning of this January, Russian airstrikes in Syria have killed in total 471 civilians, among them 127 children and 56 women. The group also says they have documented another 211 civilian deaths, including 30 children and 20 women by aerial bombardment by the al-Assad regime during the same time period. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says Washington and Beijing have agreed they will not accept North Korea as a nuclear-armed state. Kerry was speaking at a joint press conference in Beijing with the Chinese foreign minister. America's top diplomat says the global threat posed by Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions has figured prominently in bilateral talks. The two foreign ministers also addressed the territorial disputes in the South China Sea with the Philippines. Kerry urged China to look for diplomatic solutions to the dispute. The Canadian Centre for Disease Control has expanded its list of places on its Zika virus travel alert. The U.S. Virgin Islands and the Dominican Republic are now on the list of countries where Zika virus transmission is possible. The agency recommends pregnant women avoid travel to places where Zika is present. The CDC is also asking doctors to screen infants whose mothers visited Zika-infected areas while they were pregnant. Symptoms of the virus include fever, rash, joint pain, and red eyes, and can last from a few days to about a week. However, 80% of the individuals infected have no symptoms at all. Zika has been linked to a rare birth defect that causes babies to be born with unusually small heads. Well, growing up, we were always told not to judge a book by its cover. And while it's a great sentiment, it's not always the case. Two young men in Montreal can certainly attest to that fact. So they hit the streets for a social experiment, curious about kindness. But what they got instead was a lesson in generosity. Here's Mike Armstrong.
When you make videos pranking people, you never know what you're going to get, only what you're after.
When we film our YouTube videos, we want to make the audience laugh.
Angel Asmir's only been shooting his videos for a couple of months. But that's long enough to learn you have to expect the unexpected. Like the occasional call to 911. Well, there might not be a better example of the unexpected than what happened on this shoot. Asmir set his brother up on the street, pretending to be a 14-year-old homeless teen, just a sign and a hoodie on a freezing cold day. Well, what happened about an hour in left the two stunned.
I was speechless, honestly.
While hundreds had walked by, one man stopped. It was an actual homeless person, concerned Kabir was cold. Now, he didn't give him money. Right there on the street, he took off his coat and put it on the boy.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's every other.
Now, we found that man, Pudelik Kumak, at a downtown drop-in center. He spends most mornings here after spending his nights sleeping outside.
Sometimes it's hard.
Kumak moved to Montreal from Nunavut when he was just 21. He's been living on the streets for 17 years and counting. He knows how hard it is.
I have friends like that, but this boy was a boy, he's just a kid. That's why I just wanted to help him out.
Now, Kumak says one of the most important things for life on the street is experience. Knowing what you need and how to prepare to sleep outside in freezing weather. Seeing a boy facing those same challenges scared him.
Like this age, maybe he's just a beginner, getting to know how it is out there.
People are seeing his kindness,
For the two brothers, still a little in shock, their latest video wasn't about making people laugh. It was more about making people think. As it turned out, of all the people they came across, the person who gave the most was the person who had the least to give.
Thank you.
Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
And Mitch joins us again for What's Trending.
Yes, that's right.
And this one is, well,
awesome.
Yes, it is. We all know dinosaurs went extinct. Why? Well, because they couldn't skate. That and a giant meteor, but whatever. So right. This is a pretty fantastic step in evolution. Dinosaur heads out to a skating rink, and as you would expect, well, has a hard time learning to, well, here he goes.
Okay, you see, extinction happened for a reason.
Yeah, and so dinosaur doesn't really know how to skate.
Doesn't quite.
No, it's kind of funny. It's little dinosaur feet. No, there you go. Yeah. T-Rex.
Okay, just try to give him some.
Yeah, well, it's a little
here,
short T-Rex arms there. He's bobbing back and forth, trying to keep his balance.
Now, have you seen this whole video?
No, I haven't.
No, you haven't?
Making this up as I go along.
Because
no,
he gets
okay.
Okay. He gets okay.
See, there, a little move there. Now, 10 million years of evolution into about 20 seconds.
Got the white
there's it
on. The tail
and
does
now watch this.
The tail does it.
He does a T-Rex triple axel.
Okay. Showing up everybody else on the pond.
And there you go. And I don't know what that is called. And that's where it goes extinct.
And he got cocky, you see? And that's when
the volcano happens.
Is that how the dinosaurs went extinct?
That's how the dinosaurs went extinct.
How you're saying the dinosaurs
That's your little history lesson all wrapped up into 1 minute What's Trending.
Okay, fantastic.
You're welcome.
Well, coming up after the break, some great news on the Canadian front down under in Australia. The Australian Open, of course, has been going on for the past week. We'll look at some of the highlights, and I'll have some good news out of one Canadian singles men's player coming up. Hold your head up high. Canada singles player Milos Raonic has qualified for the semi-finals of the Australian Open. The 25-year-old from Thornville, Ontario, defeated French player Gael Monfils in 4 sets, 6-3, 3-6,6-3, 6-4, down under the lights of Rod Laver Stadium. Raonic is just the second Canadian to achieve the feat in Australia, right behind Montreal's Eugenie Bouchard in 2014. It's also the second time Raonic has qualified for a Grand Slam semifinal. He made it to the Final Four in Wimbledon of 2014 as well. As for who he's taking on, well, let's get to that. Either Andy Murray from Great Britain or David Ferrer from Spain. Started up in the third set. They split the first two. Murray on the near side, playing the corners very well. He eventually slams home the easy winner, takes the third set. Moving into match point, Fair's return just wide of the mark. And after nearly 4 hours, Andy Murray takes it in 4 sets. This will be his 6th Australian Open semifinal appearance. That means it's Canada versus Great Britain. Milos Raonic and Andy Murray, neither of the two have had much of an edge over the years. 4 wins and 4 losses for each other. But Murray has won their last 2 appearances, most recently the ATP World Tour Masters in Madrid last year. The winner of this match will take on either Roger Federer or Novak Djokovic in the Sunday final. The Calgary Flames are crashing their way into the All-Star break. Just 1 win over their 5-game road trip, including a 2-1 loss to the Dallas Stars most recently. And they now find themselves 8 points out of a playoff spot as they welcome the Nashville Predators to the Dome tonight. But that seems to be the storyline nationwide. Not one Canadian team is in a playoff spot at the moment. In fact, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Calgary, and Edmonton make up last place of the Western Conference. This will be the second meeting between Calgary and Nashville this season. The Flames won their opening game in overtime back in December and swept the 3-game series last year. Kerry Ramo is expected to start for Calgary. Puck drop is 7:30. The Denver Broncos and Carolina Panthers are set to go for Super Bowl 50. It's Peyton Manning, 39 years young and dependent on strong defense, versus Cam Newton, new age and agile like the cat on his chest. 2 quarterbacks completely different in their ways, and as Janet Chamblian tells us, have already made history.
There's got someone else open, and it's a touchdown.
Super Bowl 50 will pit the NFL's experienced past against its energetic future. At 39, Peyton Manning is the league's elder statesman, a 5-time MVP,
Caught for the touchdown.
a virtual lock for MVP this season, 26-year-old Cam Newton.
I don't know if it's the best quarterback matchup we've ever seen in Super Bowl history, but I do think it's one of the most unique.
Twitter lit up with comparisons, from Cam and Peyton's dance moves to their history-making age gap, 13 years, 48 days. Cam was 9 when Peyton started with the Colts in 1998. Both the #1 overall draft pick their year.
When you start looking at these two guys, old school versus new school.
The irresistible matchup, all the buzz on sports radio. Now his jersey's flying out of stores, ahead of his 4th Super Bowl and the chance to end a storied career with a 2nd ring.
I mean, Peyton's definitely got the experience. That's definitely one of the good things going for them.
Just weeks ago, an injured Manning benched by the Bronx, and a report linked him to use of a banned drug, an allegation he strongly denies.
Is in for the touchdown.
But the heir apparent is Cam Newton, a linebacker-sized quarterback with an arm like a rifle who can dive over any defense.
Old school about ready to get new schooled.
Newton has also made a comeback after a serious car accident 13 months ago. Today, they sold more of his jerseys than during the holidays. A quarterback duel, for and of the ages, as Newton and Manning make for a clash of the Titans.
It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and it just seems like it's passing of the torch. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and now in Cam Newton, I hate to say this as a Hawks fan, but he is just changing the position, and he's just dominant. Like I've not seen a quarterback in a long time.
Fair enough. You know, it's Peyton Manning. You know, he's no stranger to this sort of a situation. So hopefully it is experience that does pay off for him in the end. But yeah, like you said, Cam Newton's on a whole different world. Yeah.
Before we go, let's get to the 7-day, shall we? Tomorrow, a high of 8 degrees. You can see Friday, there is a chance of showers in the afternoon. High to 4 degrees. High goes down to 0 on Saturday. Chance of snow in the overnight, and then we dry out on Sunday. And the sun returns, a low down to -13 on Tuesday. That is all the time we have. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back here at noon. Good night.
Have a good night.